Against all odds, former Miss South Africa top 10 finalist Chidimma Adetshina has gone on to win Miss Universe Nigeria. I still cannot believe this. I was at a literal joel when this happened. And yes, for those who wondered, no, I did not watch Miss Universe Nigeria live. I endured enough when it came to Miss Namibia last month, and so this time around I went afterwards and just fast forwarded through all the annoying unnecessary bits. Before we get into the fact that Chidimma actually won, which is a whole nother can of worms, we have to talk about the show itself. This isn't necessarily a review of the whole show, and I did want to place some emphasis on the show as well. I mean, come on, I did end up watching it. So, first of all, I was expecting more from Miss Universe Nigeria. I've never watched Miss Universe Nigeria live just because it's not necessarily something that interests me that much. You guys know I'm from, I've been living in Namibia for like 12 years, but I was born and raised in South Africa. So, those are usually the two African pageants that I follow like this. But with Miss Universe Nigeria, I was expecting so much because I've heard that the Silverbird group is really, really big. And so when it came to the production and the camera angles and the camera quality itself, I was very disappointed. It didn't turn out to be as amazing as I thought it was going to be. I mean, Chidimma said in her acceptance video, accepting this invitation herself, that Miss Universe Nigeria is like one of the most prestigious pageants. So I was expecting, you know, all of the stops to be pulled out, but it turned out to be sort of very bland. The camera work was very stagnant, and yes, it wasn't what I was expecting. It was giving like sort of amateur hour, if I'm gonna be completely honest. To make matters worse, they kept panning over the crowd, like not crowd, but the table seating, which there were like loads of tables there. It must have been such a nightmare for people who were actually there. Luckily, the venue seemed to be low-key, very, very empty, which is even more embarrassing. Like, if you're gonna have an empty venue, fine, but just then keep the cameras away from revealing how empty the venue is. So opening number started with all of the girls coming out in these different unique costumes, representing all of the territories in Nigeria that they all represent. And I actually enjoyed the segment. I thought that there were some pretty interesting costumes there. But what was really, really interesting to me is actually one of the hosts placing such firm emphasis on the fact that there were a lot of South Africans watching and following this year's Miss Universe Nigeria competition. And I mean, they're not wrong, because here I am, but they were placing so much emphasis on the fact that so many of the votes, online votes, came from South Africans, etc., etc. And I just thought it was so interesting. Like, why would they even mention that? And it's very obvious that they are living for all of the attention that they are getting from Chidimma's participation this year, which is something that I've been saying from the beginning. Like, this was their strategy. They knew that they were going to get a lot of attention from Chidimma participating. Was I expecting them to actually crown her? No, but that's what they ended up doing. So yes, Chidimma was my first runner-up, if I'm just going to be completely honest. She was my first runner-up after the woman who represented Rivers, Enetak. So I wasn't expecting Chidimma necessarily to win the main title and go to Miss Universe. I was expecting her more to maybe perhaps go to Miss Supranational representing Nigeria, but they ended up crowning her. But let's stay with me. Let's get through the actual show, and then we'll get into all of the Chidimma related things. So they had this segment in these red and silver sort of dresses where the girls were dancing, and obviously I thought from this segment Rivers stole the show. That woman knows how to perform. Speaking of performances, during the swimsuit competition, the girls were, first of all, not wearing very safe for work swimsuits, if I may say so. Like, a lot of them were turning around and you get full butt cheek. But then what was interesting about swimsuit is I noticed that a lot of the girls were doing very Miss Grand International performances instead of a Miss Universe performance, which is weird because Miss Universe Nigeria is meant to send a woman to Miss Universe and Miss Supranational, whereas Miss Grand performances are very over the top movements, and that's what we were getting from these Miss Universe Nigeria girls. So all of the girls came out in these sort of strappy swimsuits, except for Miss Kwara, which I'm not surprised about, because these swimsuit tops will not work for any big-chested woman ever, and I am speaking from my personal life experience. Yes, my lived experience is my source on this one. These strappy sort of swimsuits is a big-chested girl's mortal enemy. But during swimsuit, I still thought that Rivers, Nekachi Douglas, and Chidimma Adetshina, I thought that they were the ones who ate it up. Their knees, however, were still not as straight as I would have liked them to be. We have to talk about these hosts, because you know what my biggest pet peeve is when watching a pageant, like online or on the TV or whatever, is if the hosts try to crowd control too much. If they try to coax the crowd into giving applause, if they try to coax the crowd into having a certain vibe or energy about them, which the vibe and the energy of the crowd can only be induced by interesting things happening on stage, not by the hosts basically going down on their knees begging for applause. The amount of time these two hosts asked for applause throughout the night is vomit inducing. It is so cringe, the way that hosts come on and say, oh, round of applause for what, and it's the whole time, and they try to crowd control so much, and they're like, louder, no, you can do better than that, louder. These aren't children. Stop trying to gentle parent and hurt the crowd. Remember that you are being televised. The people at home are sitting there like, what am I supposed to do now with these hosts interacting with the crowd? It feels like I'm watching literal Dora the Explorer or Mickey Mouse Clubhouse, with them expecting a reaction out of me, but I know you can't hear me. Like, what are we doing here? Stop interacting with the crowd so much. It is cringe-worthy. We also have to talk about the music for Gown. What was this music? Even throughout the whole night, they had the same music. Music is supposed to be an ambiance enhancer. It is supposed to, the best way to control the crowd is through music. But they had this like sort of elevator type of vibe the whole night through. I was so sick. I didn't even watch the whole thing. I like skipped all of the boring bits to get to the interesting parts, and it was just the same music over and over, especially for Gown. This is not Gown music. Please, Gown is supposed to be a moment. It is supposed to, get your attention. It is supposed to have the feels. This music did not have the feels. It made me feel like I want to slam my head in my car door and just, I don't know, crawl under my bed and die, because by hour 2.5 of this repetitive type of music, I was just like, no, what, we're doing Gown now, we're doing Gown. Pull out the piano, pull out the John, what's his name from Miss Universe. Anyway, guys, music, please. I don't know how Silverbird claims to have been doing this since 1986. Well, actually 1983, but 1986 is when they established MBGN, and it still is giving literal amateur hour. You've been doing this since the 80s, and this is what we get. So for Gown, Abia came out looking stunning in red. Abuja, I don't know why she was carrying it. I do like Abuja, but why is she carrying this gown? Akwa Ibom, I don't even know what this is. So for Anambra, she looked stunning. She had great energy. I think Anambra has amazing international potential, which is just as well because she's actually going to Miss Supranational. Bayelsa was very strange. Like, she had a very strange walk. Benue had a beautiful gown, not so great performance. Cross River, she's beautiful, but this mini dress thing that we can see is just not it. Delta didn't wear a great color for her. Ebonyi had a very pretty dress. Edo had a stiff performance, but I did love the dress. Ekiti, I love the concept of this dress. The execution of this dress is something else entirely though. Enugu gave some sort of bride, in my opinion. Imo was okay. I kind of don't hate it. I think it's okay. Kaduna was not bad either. Kogi, the flower thing is just too much. The flower thing is definitely too much. Kwara, I did like Kwara's dress. I did like what Kwara had going on. Lagos, again, on the edge of being a bride. Niger, I don't know. This is my brunch fit. Like, this is what I wear to brunch on a Sunday. Like, what are you doing? This is not a Miss Universe Nigeria evening gown. Ogu's, what Ogu had going on, I hated this. Ondo had a beautiful gown. Not a great performance, unfortunately. Osho was giving national costume. You can't look at this and say, oh, that's not a national costume. It was giving national costume like from the 80s. Oyo, I loved. I mean, how gorgeous is this? For Plateau, it was not a bad dress. Bad performance. Rivers had such a Miss World gown on. Very simple. With Taraba, I'm sorry, but I felt like Chi-Chi's performance was stiff. It was stiff in gown. Okay, so there were actually lots of awards handed out on this evening. The only one that I care about, that I'm care to talk about, is Miss Amity, which is basically Miss Congeniality, which went to our girl, Nekachi Douglas from Rivers. And which is just as well, because, you know, we know she's a girl's girl. This is her reputation. She's very well loved. Then we finally sashayed our way into the top 10. And apparently the first 3 women called into top 10 were determined by fan vote. Now, the fan votes are basically just a way to buy yourself into the top 10. And I felt like 3 women being selected by fan vote, which is like paid voting, I felt like that was a very excessive number of contestants to have into the top 10 by, you know, something which can be done if you have the finances to do so. The 3 women who ended up getting into the top 10 by fan vote was Miss Kwara, Miss Edo, and Miss Taraba. The rest of the top 10 were Anambra, Ogun, Plateau, Lagos, Rivers, Ikiti, and Ondo. So basically 7 out of 10 of my predicted top 10 ended up making it. The women who did not make it were Abuja, Imo, and Kaduna. And guys, this is the moment in the pageant where I started scratching my head a bit, because after the top 10 were announced, we literally went straight into top 5. There was no other segment of competition. I noticed that the top 10 were like sort of walking, but I thought that that was just part of like the going through the motions on stage in order to, you know, finish off this segment. I thought that there was probably going to be like some sort of other part of competition, like a speaking round. They may be talking about their advocacies or something. But no, we went straight into top 5 without having a round of competition between top 10 and top 5, except if you count that segment where the girls were just walking in the gowns that we've already seen them in yet again. Like, how does that even work? So the top 5 actually ended up being Taraba, Rivers, Edo, Ondo, and Anambra. And with Taraba, a lot of people noticed this. So the moment that she was called, there was a video put up about her talking about being happy about getting into the top 5. And a lot of people were like, well, that's really freaking suspicious, because none of the other top 5 contestants had this video put up about them. And this video seems to have been filmed when she arrived at camp. Camp being what they call the couple of weeks preceding the pageant, when they prepare and all of that. And now I'm thinking, like, did everybody film this video? None of the other contestants have come out saying that, oh, well, we also filmed the video. They must have just neglected to play ours. Like, did the whole top 25 get to film this video? Or was it literally just Chidimma? Because maybe it's neglect on the production team's part to play the other girls' videos. But, you know, some more skeptical people, I thought that this is a clear sign of favoritism, coupled with, you know, the hosts placing emphasis on South Africans watching and voting. And later on, we'll talk about what one of the brothers actually said about South Africa as well, nearing the end of the pageant. It's all very concerning for a couple of people, you know, and I don't blame them. So Chichi actually ended up getting her video played. We don't know if any of the other contestants filmed this like sort of type of video as well, in case they made the top 5. We don't know that yet. But this is something that people did notice, and I noticed it as well. So as they were calling the top 5, I noticed that whilst Chidimma's video was playing, they must have called Anambra out as well. So I think Chidimma's video playing was something that only us watching at home could see, because when the camera came back to the top 5 after Chidimma's video, I noticed that Anambra was already called, and us who were watching at home just didn't see that. I think that happened on stage whilst the production team was showing the home viewers Chidimma's video. Did they do that just to, like, I don't know, fan service the people watching from South Africa? It's so strange because we totally missed Anambra being called into the top 5 as a result of Chidimma's video playing. But at the end of the day, I was quite happy with the top 5. I don't know, I wasn't surprised with who actually got into the top 5, because 4 out of 5 of my predicted top 5 got into the top 5, with the exception of Ekiti. Ekiti did not end up making it to the top 5, and she was replaced by, I think, Ondo, who wasn't in my top 5. So for the top 5 Q&A, and this was the last segment of speaking as well, there was no top 3 Q&A. All of the girls were asked different questions, and I would have thought that, you know, you would level the playing field by having top 5 Q&A be different questions, fair enough, but having like top 3 Q&A be, you know, the same question perhaps, but they didn't do that. I don't know, Miss Universe Nigeria is very strange in that way. Like, they don't really place a lot of emphasis on speaking, which I think is so important, especially at Miss Universe, but that has always been South Africa's strength. So I think that the Miss Universe Nigeria would do well to place a bit more emphasis on their contestants' ability to speak and speak well, instead of just, you know, walking, which I basically think took us to top 5 from top 10. So for Taraba, which, you know, is Chidimma, the main criticism for her Q&A was that she didn't really answer the question. I definitely detected some nerves from her, but from what I've been seeing from everybody else, and I do slightly concur with this, she didn't really answer the question. And in my opinion, I do think that Edo, who answered after Chidimma, she actually gave a better answer, although they didn't have the same question obviously, but she actually answered the question. She gave a good answer as well. For Ondo, this is the moment that actually made me want to slam my head against the wall, not because of the fact that Ondo got nervous and, you know, she lost her train of thought and she asked for the question over, but because of this unprofessional hostess, I should rather say. She noticed that the crowd were, you know, in shock a bit when Ondo stopped answering the question and said, can I please have the question again, because she had lost her train of thought. And there was like a sort of, I don't know, gasp or laughter perhaps from the crowd, but this hostess, she was too crowd focused the whole evening. She forgot that she was on television. She literally scolded and gentle parented this crowd. And it's like, I understand where you're coming from. You're trying to stand up for this poor contestant, but this isn't professional. This isn't professional. You place your focus on this contestant. You say, I will most certainly give you the question again. Miss Ondu, you ignore the crowd's reaction to what's going on stage. That is literally actually the job of a host, is just to, the show must go on. We do not, this isn't like interactive stand-up comedy. We do not interact with the crowd like this. She was literally scolding and gentle parenting these grown people in the crowd. Anyway, so she could have just said, Miss Ondu, yes, I will give you the question again, and read the question again to this woman and ignore the crowd. But no, now she went and placed special emphasis on the crowd's reaction, shaming Miss Ondu even more, not shaming her directly, but this host now standing up for you when it comes to this crowd. Miss Ondu just has to stand there like, oh, everybody's laughing at me, everybody's looking at me, and etc. It was awkward, it was strange. You have to watch it to know what I'm talking about, but it irked me, it bothered me. I don't think that this hostess did the best job when it came to this. But anyway, so Miss Ondu was asked the question again. She finished answering the question, and that was that. Miss Anambra answered very well as well, and I noticed that there were 2 American accents in the top 5 at Miss Universe Nigeria this year. This sort of tells me that Nigeria doesn't really necessarily care whether or not you're like living in Nigeria or from Nigeria or very integrated. I don't know whether or not Anambra Anambra was in the top 5 last year, so she's definitely invested in Miss Universe Nigeria. But it just tells me that Miss Universe Nigeria, they don't really care as long as you have Nigerian ancestry, it seems. Because that's the thing with Chidimma as well. Like, her father is Nigerian, although she was born in South Africa, grew up in South Africa, probably never really went to Nigeria that much growing up. But now she's Miss Universe Nigeria. Hello? When it came to Rivers, you guys know that Rivers was my number 1 pick for Miss Universe Nigeria this year. But she started answering very nervously. She became sort of erratic during the course of her answer, and it's sad to say that by the end of her answer, I unfortunately did not think that she gave the best answer out of all of the girls this evening. So we're getting to the part where they brought out Mr. Murray Bruce, which is one of the brothers who established Silverbird, and it's a family thing, but they brought him out, and he mentioned specifically how South Africa was watching and how South Africa made us great, us being Miss Universe Nigeria. Why would he place such specific emphasis on South Africa? It's so strange, It's like they're placing themselves sort of underneath South Africa by giving this much attention and praise to the fact that South Africans are watching and giving attention to Miss Universe Nigeria. Like, of course we're watching. One of our girls is literally there. Like, we know that she is having issues with her citizenship and whatever, but she's still one of us. Like, Chidimma's one of us. She spoke up there. She answered her question in a South African accent. So, of course, what were we supposed to do? We have to see what happens. We have to support. I don't know. And so they did place special emphasis on South Africans watching, South Africans tuning in, etc., which I thought was strange. Once again, a lot of people thought that it was so weird for there to be so much emphasis on South African viewership and votes and things like that throughout the entire evening, just for the South African woman competing to win. And I know there's debate, is she South African, isn't she South African? She's been living in South Africa her whole life. She literally qualifies for being South African by naturalization. So in my opinion, Chidimma is South African. So yeah, a lot of people thought it was strange, the emphasis placed on South African viewership throughout the entire evening just for the South African contestant, who was invited to be there, by the way, to go on winning. Okay, so we know that Anambra got Miss Supranational, Chidimma won. We have to talk about everything to do with Chidimma, guys. So a lot of people pointed out once Chidimma actually won, she didn't look that surprised. She didn't have much of a reaction on her face. Like, her muscles weren't moving with emotion. But as a person who've experienced Botox in my life, I can say I think we shouldn't place so much emphasis on people's winning reaction, the lack of facial movement in their reactions, unless a person is literally sobbing. Their facial muscles aren't going to move much, because we have like these little intricate muscles which move and which end up not moving when you know what I mean. And I'm not saying that Chidimma has this, I'm just saying that 95% of women competing in pageantry probably do. And so perhaps she's one of them, and I don't think we should place so much emphasis on how people react to winning. Speaking of winning reactions, obviously Nekachi was there in the background clapping for Chidimma. She's a girl's girl. This is what she was known for throughout Miss World. I really thought Nekachi would take the crown. But apparently there was some beef between Nakachi and the Silverbird group shortly after her competing at Miss World. And I didn't really know about this, and I thought that her competing at a Silverbird pageant yet again, such as Miss Universe Nigeria, would mean that whatever beef they had, they buried the hatchet, because apparently she went live after her stint at Miss World 2019, and she said some things about the Silverbird group, but I thought that the fact that she competed again at a Silverbird pageant would mean that they had no beef. So for Chidimma, it's so interesting because we know she has a child. She has a son, I think he's around toddler age, maybe 3 or 4 or 5 or something. And I wonder where he is, where he's going to be throughout her Miss Universe Nigeria journey or experience. I think that she's definitely going to have to get a work visa or apply for Nigerian citizenship by heritage, because her father is Nigerian. Obviously, she would qualify for that. And then what's going to be happening with her son? Is he going to be staying with like his grandparents, or what's going to be happening there? Obviously those are very personal matters, but obviously I think about these things, you know what I mean. I don't think that Chidimma is going to be coming back to South Africa very soon, because Miss Universe is happening like on the 16th of November, and the women are due to actually head to Mexico up until the 31st of October, I think, is the last date that they're going to be allowing women to arrive there. So Chidimma is going to have around 2 months to prepare. I don't know what sort of visa she's on in Nigeria. Is it like a standard 3 months tourism visa or whatever? I don't know what she's on. Maybe she'll make a little turn in South Africa before she heads out to Mexico. We just don't know. But I think for now she's going to be staying in Nigeria probably for a while, just to do her press things and then also start preparing for Miss Universe. But then she should be applying for like sort of a working visa right now. From what I've heard, the Marie Bruce family are very well connected, even in political spheres. So perhaps that shouldn't be too much of a hassle. Maybe I shouldn't start getting into all of that. For those of you watching who don't know Chidimma's story, I've covered this extensively on my channel, but basically she was a contestant at Miss South Africa this year. She got all the way into the top 10, but then like literal days before Miss South Africa finals, Home Affairs had done an investigation into Chidimma's family, or not family, but like her citizenship, and they discovered that her mother probably, allegedly, committed identity fraud back in 2001 in order to register Chidimma as being South African, because you need at least one South African parent in South Africa in order to be registered as South African. They said that this was prima facie? Listen, I'm not a lawyer, okay? Evidence, which basically means that her mother is being viewed as guilty until there is evidence that proves her as innocent. So it's sort of like a little turn. It says that Chidimma's mother probably did the thing. Like, all evidence point to her doing the thing. And unless there's evidence pointing against her doing the thing, we are accepting and acknowledging that she probably did do the thing. That's what prima facie evidence means. Anyway, so we have Nigeria's next Miss Universe candidates. How do we feel about this? Because obviously Chidimma's plan was to be Miss South Africa. This was her plan. Like, less than this month, even at the beginning of this month, on the 1st of August, Chidimma was still planning on becoming Miss South Africa on the 10th of August. But then all of this happened. She was invited by one of the Marie Bruce brothers to go and compete at Miss Universe Nigeria. So she wasn't even one of the original 24 candidates that were supposed to be competing. And allegedly, the candidates all signed a petition saying that yes, they also wanted Chidimma to compete. I bet not all 24 of them felt that way, and certainly right now all 24 of them must be like, well, this was a little bit suspicious. And that's what I've been saying. I don't know how these contestants feel about Chidimma's competing. I'm pretty sure a lot of them are like, you know what, okay, it is what it is. We did agree to have this done, but I'm sure, you know how peer pressure works. I think that there were probably a whole bunch of them who were like, why are we inviting this random South African woman to come and compete at Miss Universe Nigeria? That's a bit strange. But we'll have to see what happens. Nigeria doesn't have the best track record when it comes to Miss Universe. I've covered this extensively as well on my channel. They've only placed at Miss Universe, I think, twice. Yeah, twice. Which isn't really that great. But yeah, we'll have to see what happens. I think if anything, this is at least a great opportunity for Nigeria. I think I've heard her talk about how she was going to compete at Big Brother, which is like a fast track to stardom. And unfortunately, our reigning Miss South Africa, Mia Leroux, who has been defending Chidimma in the media, she wasn't there, but she did post on her story congratulating Chidimma. Let's hope that they will be roommates when it comes to Miss Universe. That's going to be so interesting. So there are 2 South African women competing at Miss Universe this year, and it doesn't seem like Miss Universe have much in the way of requirements that the women competing countries are actually residents or citizens of the countries that they are representing, which is why there are organizations, national organizations, that have licenses for like 4 different countries, like the one who had the license for New Zealand, etc. I don't really think that the current parent company of Miss Universe, JKN, cares so much about whether or not the women representing the country are actually from that country. I don't think that's a requirement at all. I think it used to be a requirement that if you represent X country, you have to be a citizen of that country. But I don't think that that's the case anymore, because there are plenty of women who have been competing in national pageants and they don't even live in that country. I.e., like what we've been seeing from Miss Universe Philippines. The Philippines have opened their doors to women from all over the world, as long as these women identify as being, from Filipino descent. So that's quite interesting. And at the moment, the reigning Miss Universe United Kingdom, she actually was a contestant at Miss Universe Philippines as well, and she got into the top 20 at Miss Universe Philippines, and then she went back to the UK, competed at Miss Universe UK, and now she's representing the UK along with the winner of Miss Universe Philippines. So I think that that's definitely interesting. I don't think that Chidimma will have any problems on that front. She's crowned Miss Universe Nigeria, so Miss Universe is just gonna be like, okay then, we'll take your word for it. Well, it's not necessary for that, because we know that her father is Nigerian. Am I happy or unhappy? You know what it is? I'm happy because this is a huge opportunity for her. We know she has a child that she cares about deeply, and so this is an opportunity for Chidimma to advance in life, get that bread or whatever. And I am just scared for Chidimma's part that she might go to Miss Universe. We know Nigeria's track record at Miss Universe. She might go to Miss Universe, she might go unplaced, because there are expected to be close to 130 countries competing at Miss Universe this year. Again, because the Miss Universe organization is now run by a parent organization, which is so, I don't know, they allow lots of people to have the license to Miss Universe nowadays. So there are close to 130 countries and territories being represented to at Miss Universe this year. The odds of making that coveted top 20, we don't know. The odds of placing, we don't know. My fear for Chidimma is, what if she goes, after having gone through all of this, goes there and goes unplaced? I don't know, it feels like that would shatter her, and then all of this trauma that she's been through throughout the past months will come crashing down on her. One of my friends actually said that she thinks that Chidimma is sort of running on adrenaline right now, which I definitely think might be the case, and it's dangerous for her to now go there to Miss Universe. And keep in mind, you can't compete at Miss Universe twice, so perhaps in the future, Chidimma's only 23 now, perhaps in the future when she sorted out her citizenship status or whatever, she might want to compete at Miss South Africa again, and then she can't go to Miss Universe. But who knows? Who knows what Chidimma's plans even are? This woman is like the Spanish Bible. She is impossible to read. She has just been, I feel like she's just been doing things off of just boldness, and she's really just going straight through it. She's taking opportunities as they come, it seems. And it seems very interesting because a lot of people are firmly of the belief that it was determined the day that that letter was sent out to Chidimma inviting her to compete. That is the day that they decided that Chidimma was going to win. Or perhaps it was when they saw the thousands of votes and things and attention coming in from South Africa and things. We don't know. We don't know, because having watched the pageant, do I think that Chidimma deserved to win after top 5 Q&A? Not necessarily. Do I think that her stage performances warranted a win? No, not really. And it's the same for Rivers. Yes, Rivers gave amazing performances, Nekachi Douglas. But her final Q&A wasn't the best either. In my opinion, that should have gone to the final Q&A. The two American sounding contestants were the best answers. So yes, we'll have to see. We'll have to see. Is it my place to say whether or not this competition might have been rigged to favor Chidimma? It's not my place. I'm not Nigerian. But what I will say is I'm not unhappy with the fact that Chidimma won, because this whole Chidimma saga is just a gift that keeps on giving. I want to see where this ends for this woman, because at this moment, Chidimma has gone from being like the person being harassed for having Nigerian and Mozambican heritage at Miss South Africa to being literally investigated by the South African government to having to withdraw from Miss South Africa. So she was sort of like this underdogish type of figure. Then she was invited to Miss Universe Nigeria. She accepted the invite against all odds and advice. She went to Miss Universe Nigeria. She competed. She won. Like, the things that have happened to this woman in 30 days. Insane. Insane. So, in my heart of hearts, I like Chidimma. I like her spirit. I like how she has just been doing things off of how she feels without giving it much thought or anything. So from my part, I do hope that she does well at Miss Universe, because that would just be iconic. Let me know what you guys think about this whole saga. I would love to know. Thank you so much for watching. If you haven't already, please subscribe, and I will see you in the next one. Bye.